I watched wrestling in the 90s and early 2000s during the Attitude Era. I stopped watching wrestling probably around the time when like WCW was purchased by the WWE. And I'll be honest with you, I had no clue who the Von Erich brothers were. Never heard of them before. Never heard of them before until researching for this film. I just, like, I wasn't around, like, when they were at their peak.
Correct. I knew of the Von Erichs, but I was too young to really, like, gather, like, all the news that was coming out about them, like, the tragedies and stuff.
I had no clue. So I actually didn't really have any interest in watching this movie because it's like, this is one of those movies that like I know is good and everybody could tell me like, oh man, that movie's good. And I could look at the ratings and I could see it's good. And I just kind of don't care, really. Like, I'm not like, I love movies, but I'm not one of those people that like has to see like everything just because I hear it's good. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
This was kind of like one of those for me.
Oh, really?
But
well, hopefully it got your attention.
Ever since I was a child, people said my family was cursed. Mom tried to protect us with God. Pop tried to protect us with wrestling. He said if we were the toughest, the strongest, nothing could ever hurt us. I believed him.
Man, you would think this family's history was made up if you didn't know it was true.
Well, and it's funny because the true story is even weirder.
And I think the movie really presents this as the Von Erich curse, like that the family's cursed. He says it in the movie, in his dialogue, it's in the trailer. It's like, that's what the history of the movie definitely like leans on that and how he might believe that they're cursed. We as logically thinking beings know that that's not true. They are just a family that has been terribly unlucky.
Yeah.
And a tragedy has stricken the family several times.
After I watched the movie, like I said, I remember the Von Erichs, but like vaguely a little bit. And I wanted to do a deeper dive into the story. So I read an interview with Kevin Von Erich after the fact, and there was a couple things he said. They asked him if you could change one thing about the movie, what would it be? And I think he said my wife. You know, they kind of played him as like the brother with all the talent, but not the personality.
Right.
And so like he had all the physical attributes necessary to be the champion, but he couldn't talk very well. And they kind of
he was like kind of shy and like
shoehorned him into like, being the bumbly, like I can't talk. And his wife chased him down, where that didn't actually happen. Like he's the one that courted his wife. Like he met her and he had no problems. The way they created their characters in the movie is a little bit different. But then they also asked him about what he thought of the movie. And, you know, he says, if anything, it's good for my boys because he's got a couple sons now. But he thought it's going to be good for them. You know, they're in wrestling now, and it's good for people to know this story and this tragedy. But I love this movie. I thought it was really good. Really sad. I mean, you're talking about a guy who he loses 4 of his brothers in like less than a decade. And he's the only brother of 5 that outlived his father. Like that's just a sad story when you point it out like that. But I mean, it was ups and downs for those guys. They were the pinnacle of wrestling in the mid to late 80s until the tragedy started happening. You could blame it on the dad and the family and the pressure of being a successful wrestler, to the pain and the drug use and the depression and all that. But I mean, it was highs and lows for this family, and it would the hits just kept coming.
Everything that happened to these boys, like a lot of it may have been able to be avoided if their family dynamic with the dad specifically was a little bit healthier. But a lot of stuff was like just freakish shit. Like starting with the youngest brother, whom the movie kind of doesn't really, it kind of glances over it a little bit because he's a baby, but gets electrocuted. And that's really where like everything for this family takes a turn. That's when the dad, Fritz, really puts his wrestling career on hold. He decides to like take a more backseat approach and like rear his children into taking his place. But, and I think Kevin says this as well, is that like the father never really recovered from that, like losing his youngest boy. Which rightfully
and in the
so.
movie, like he pushes them to be the best wrestlers and trains them so hard where, you know, you hear Kevin tell it like his dad didn't want any of them to go into wrestling. Like if you're a wrestler And like, if you talk to wrestlers, they'll tell you, like, you could do anything you want. Don't become a wrestler. Like this,
Yeah.
the pain.
It's a very unhealthy lifestyle for these guys.
Yeah.
But
Very debilitating. You can fall down a hole easily, go down to dark places.
But that said, this movie's really not about wrestling. Like, it is for sure. But the thing that
It's
like
about a family in wrestling is
Right.
what I took away from it.
like, if you watch the movie The Wrestler, that is a movie about wrestling, really.
Yes.
And it's
Mhm.
about that guy, but it's very largely about wrestling. This didn't feel like that to me. This didn't feel like a sports movie where it's about the sport. This was really a movie just about family, I think, and what it means to be a family and the bond that comes along with being in a family. In fact, I would imagine for you, this movie might have just struck more of a chord because you have brothers. I have a sister. I
Yeah.
love my sister, but as you know, there's a different type of bond between brothers, and just like there's a different type of bond between sisters.
It was tough, man. That final scene, I got choked up there a little bit at the end when he was watching his kids play. I knew exactly what he was thinking. Like, I knew,
Yeah.
like, they go, "Oh, what's wrong?" And he had to tell him. I knew, like, he's playing. They're playing because they're brothers. He doesn't get to do that anymore because he didn't like that was, oh man, me up a little bit.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's gut wrenching. So the movie's really about that. And I think the movie did a really great job of that. And despite their father like pushing them and like pitting them against each other, sort of for his like attention and stuff, they still maintained
his
like
ranking system.
Yeah. They still maintained like a really great relationship with each other.
Sure, they did. Yeah.
And honestly, like, he might not be the best dad, but like, he wasn't really like that bad of a guy, honestly. Like, he is, but the family was still like a pretty solid family. Like, they, the mother has like her issues. She's like a flighty mom or whatever the fuck. But like, I don't know. They just still present it as like a pretty nice family. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Maura Tierney as the mom. Like, shout out to her. She did an amazing job of playing that. Holt McCallany, Fritz.
Yep.
Like, he did a good job. He played the guy,
I think he killed it.
He's the guy that liked to play the villain. And he showed, like, sometimes that came across a little bit in the way he raised them boys. But I mean, also shout out to Jeremy Allen White, who got seriously jocked for this fucking role, because I watched him in The Bear. Like, he's in good shape. Like, you can tell he's got some arms on him in The Bear.
Right.
But like, him throwing that discus at the beginning with his shirt, I was like, Jesus Christ, man, he's jacked. He did a really good job.
The pacing is a little slow, but it's one of the few cases where I think that it was a good thing that the movie was slow, because you really get to know the Von Erichs, and when things start happening, it hurts you too as like an audience member watching it. And that slow, gradual pace like really puts you into the family. You almost don't even feel like you're watching a movie, because it does such a good job of like placing you into the family. The second half of the movie, that's where it really starts to pick up the pace. You're getting hit with like one cursed moment after the other with these brothers, and it almost felt like they were doing like a highlight reel of these things a little bit.
Yeah, but it was almost a montage there for a minute. Yeah, I mean, they burned through those.
Yeah.
Like, the devastation just went bam, bam, bam. Here you are.
So
Pretty wild.
that second half kind of hit the gas a little bit. I actually think the movie would have worked a little bit better as a show. So we had a little bit more time to spend with each member of the family, I think, because like I said, the movie is about the family and not any one individual in the family. For years, I've been hyping up Zac Efron. I love Zac Efron. I think he's hilarious. He's a great comedy actor.
I wasn't his hugest fan, but I'm starting to come around. Like, he nailed this.
He's done a couple of serious roles, but nothing quite like this. And this is his shot, and man, he took it. And he stands out. He was amazing in this movie, as you just said. All the performances in this movie were amazing. And honestly, it's the performances that really carry the movie.
Yes, it is.
I thought. But Zac Efron's really like the soul of this movie. He crushed it. And I mean, dude literally transformed his entire body.
They all did, though. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but he looks like a He-Man action figure from like the 80s. I found the movie pretty captivating. I went into the conversation just now saying that like I didn't care about it. I left the movie like interested in the family. I want to watch the episode of Dark Side of the Ring that you're talking about. By the end of the movie, it's really not. It's like, the movie's very sad, but it's not a movie about like sadness. It's actually, I think by the end, really about like overcoming those types of things. Like, because Kevin, he's the last surviving member, and he like lives like a pretty good life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He just didn't crumble under all that sadness. Like it's when you lose your entire family, like you could go into a hole. Like he didn't.
Yeah, and you kind of see him like his character was, and it's really about him. I mean, we talk about how this is not a movie about wrestling. This is a movie about a family, but it's not just a movie about it's not necessarily a movie about a family. It's a movie about one man who survives all this tragedy. It's really the development of Zac Efron's character, Kevin Von Erich, who has to go through all this shit.
You know you've done a good job when you get the audience to like fall in love with your characters and it breaks their hearts when bad things happen to them. And I think, at least for me, it did that. Like it made me like these characters. I was heartbroken every time like something happened. It really does a great job at presenting that. You know, my only wish, and again, I rarely say this these days, but I think it could have been a little bit longer, maybe another 20 minutes.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. It could have been a little bit longer and they could have flushed it out a little bit better. But
yeah, but overall,
I still
mean,
thought it was an amazing movie.
Definitely.
Highly recommend.
Oh, yeah, I really enjoyed it. It has a 7.7 on IMDb. What would you give it, Dusty?
I'll give it a bump. It's an 8. I really liked it.
8?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I would give it like a 7.5. I'm in there, that same range. I do think, though, this might be like a generational performance for Zac Efron. Like, this might be the movie that he's like remembered for down the road.
I mean, I don't know. Like, he's still got plenty of gas in the tank. Totally, he can make another 100%.
And A24.
Yeah.
Delivering another phenomenal movie.
Yeah.